What's up YouTube? So in this video we are discussing the subject about how you get perfect corners when plastering. Now when it comes to plastering a room, you have two options when it comes to corners. You can either have what's called a dry corner, or where you do opposites, where you do two sides of a room and then you do the other two sides in the second set, or you have what's called a wet corner, where both sides of the corner are wet. Now when it comes to wet corners, it can add a little bit of complications and a little bit of difficulty in getting a nice finish. So how do you go about doing it? Well, there are two main techniques or two main methods in which you can produce a high quality finish on wet corners when plastering. Now the first is just to use the trowel. Basically it's called doing it freehand. It's certainly how it used to be done back in the day, and there are still many plasterers that prefer to just form their corners using a trowel. The second option, and in my opinion is an awful lot easier, is to use a corner trowel, or as we call it a twitcher. Now there are pros and cons to both, and if done wrong, both methods can look terrible. If done right, both methods can look fantastic. So how do we go about using both of these methods? Well, the most important thing to remember when it comes to wet corners, when it comes to forming those sharp edges, is to remember that much like when you're plastering a wall, the good finish on a wall only comes later on when the plasterer starts to pull in. This is exactly the same with the corners. We've seen so many times where plasterers have tried to shape the corners, try and get them straight, try and get them nice and neat too early, and it just doesn't work. Specifically with the corner trowel, when you use this too often or too early, you just run the risk of dragging the plaster out of the corner. So most importantly is knowing when the right time to use these tools are. Now in the room that we are doing right now, you can see that there are quite a few wet corners. Obviously the ceiling line, there's a wet corner there, and then above the door and the side there. So what we're going to do is we're going to actually use both techniques in this video just to see which one you would prefer. Now when it comes to the corner trowel, the one that we prefer to use is the Ragney one. There are plenty of corner trowels out there by pretty much every single company that makes plastering tools. We have tried quite a few of them. If I'm being totally honest with you, none of them come close to this Ragney one. It is the only Ragney tool we have. Actually, that's a lie. We have a bucket trowel that's Ragney, but this just really is the best one in our opinion on the market. So if you are going to buy a corner trowel, we thoroughly recommend either getting the 90 degree or the 103 degree Ragney corner trowel. It is the best one. The other thing to remember when it comes to corner trowels, it is one of the very few tools that a plasterer owns that actually gets worse the more you use it. So generally, very quickly out of the box, it tends to be at its absolute best, and then the longer you use it, the worse the trowel gets. So you'll actually probably find after a year to 2 years, these are not producing a particularly good finish. If you're not convinced, you don't believe me, if your corner trowel is a couple of years old, just try switching it out for a brand new one and see the finish you get with a new one. These deteriorate very, very fast. So something to remember, that in our opinion, you should be switching these out every 2 to 3 years. So onto the actual technique of forming these corners. Now in the room that we're in, we're just doing a tiny little bathroom. I've just hit all of the walls that need plastering in one go. And the stage that the walls are at right now is they're about ready for a wet trowel. Now at this point, there's no harm in just starting to fill out these corners. The last thing you want is to have excessive amounts of holes in your corners, which makes it really difficult to fill in. Now, as we've said, there are two techniques for filling those in: the corner trowel or the by hand with your actual plastering trowel. Let's look at both of those techniques now. So when it comes to this corner here, you can see it's fairly good. It's pretty much filled out. But what we're going to do is we're just going to use the corner trowel here. Now you can see the wall is very firmed up. Like I say, it's just at the point where you'd want to do a wet trowel. And all we're going to do is we're just going to dig the trowel in, and you want to just tip the back up and push the nose of the trowel right into the corner and pull down. And same again, pull up. You'll see a little hole there. Just use the corner trowel just to feed it in. Now what you'll find, if you look very carefully in the camera, you can just see here, there is a mark on the plaster here. Now because that's very bright, now because the plaster is very firm, like I say, it's just before its first wet trowel, it's not massively digging the plaster out at all. However, I will have to get rid of that with the trowel when I'm doing my wet trowel. But very importantly, if I was to use this too early and the plaster was really malleable, that would actually be digging the plaster out of the wall, and that would show up when painting, which is why an awful lot of plasterers do not like using these corner trowels or these twitchers. But when used properly, they are very effective. You can see here on the ceiling line, it's not quite as neat as you'd like. Just running that corner trowel in there like so. And you can see within literally seconds, it's been straightened out. So you can see, very, very effective. So what about when it comes to using a hand trowel? Well, it's a very similar process. It just, if I'm being honest with you, takes a bit longer. Now what you have to do is you have to get your trowel and you have to very carefully push it into the corner, pull back, drag the trowel away. Like so, into the corner, drag the trowel away. And you do the other side, push it into the corner. What you're looking to do is push it right in, tip the trowel back ever so slightly, and then drag it out. You can see using this method, you don't have that mark that you get with the twitcher. So you can see, apologise for the light, you can see that you don't get that nasty mark that you receive using the twitcher. However, it takes an awful lot longer and you have to be an awful lot more controlled. So what you need to do is just before the wet trowel, where it's firmed up quite a lot, whichever method you're doing, just run around all of your corners. What I'm going to do is I'm going to do that now, then I'm going to do my wet trowel and what have you, and we'll come back after that point. Okay, so the point that we are at now is I have run a wet trowel over all the walls. So I gave it an initial fill in, as you saw in the camera, with the some of the corners with a corner trowel, and then some with just the trowel doing it freehand. Now at the point where we are at now, if I was to show you the walls, you can see they are very dry really. They just need one more wet trowel. But you can see on the corners, certainly up here, you can just see where I've done the wet trowel, it's just been filled in with that. Now what we can then do is just go through and just run our twitcher or corner trowel in, and you can see straight away it's just filled it in. Same here. You can see there's just a little hole in the corner there, so you just got to use a bit of the gear. Just got to be really careful. Filling in all of those holes. Same along here. in, pushing really hard. So you can see very quickly that's filled that in. Now, same principle with the hand trowel. So with our plastering trowel, if we were to have a look up here, same thing, we've got fat up here. Now again, what we have to do is we have to be fairly self-controlled, and you're just looking just to carefully go up to the corner and just pull away ever so slightly. This is about the point where you want to make sure the corners are probably 90%, 95% there, if not a bit higher, to be honest. Because after this point, the plaster is not really going to move much anymore. Just push it in. When you get a little bit of gear on the corner, just wipe it off and then just force that into the corner. This takes quite a lot of patience. When it comes to the corner there, just stick the nose of the trowel in and just drag away. Same again. Into the corner. And it's all about digging the edge into the corner. Just a little bit further down. Again, into the corner. Really push the trowel into the corner and drag back. You're not looking to come back far, maybe 6 inches or so. Push into the corner. You want to make sure the top and the bottom's tight. Lots of pressure, push in. Same again, into the corner. If you get a little miss like this, I don't know if you see it's a tiny little hole, I haven't got anything on my trowel. So if you just scrape a bit off the bottom of the wall, just fill that in. Okay. You can see it's getting pretty filled in. Now, so that will now be getting pretty close to these corners being finished, other than a few little touch-ups when I'm doing the dry trowel. But just to finish off, it doesn't matter whether you've used a corner trowel or whether you've used a hand trowel, you really need to use a fine brush. This one's probably even still a little bit too big. This is a 1-inch Hamilton brush, and all you want to do is you just want to use the brush just to brush out the corner like that. And what that does, it really helps fill out any tiny little imperfections in the wall. Really helps strain it out, helps get the corners nice and neat. Just give it a nice little brush. So you can see here, you'll see the effect the brush has. So this is obviously where we used the trowel. You can see there's a bit of fat here. As soon as you run the brush over the top of it, just goes. Let's say the smaller the brush, the better the finish. And that is it. You can see there, so the corners down. So, as mentioned already, this now just needs a second wet trowel, and then I will do a dry trowel with a plastic as we normally do. And at that point, I might just touch up the corners, possibly run the trowel or the twitcher in just to really tighten them up right towards the end. So that really is it. It was only really a quick video because The reality is there isn't much to being able to form a decent wet edge when it comes to plastering. So the question really is, which one is better? Should you be doing it by hand just with a trowel, or should you use a corner trowel, or as we call it, a twitcher? Or even better, why not just do opposites? Why not just have dry corners? Well, to address the question of the dry corner straight away, as you can see here, if I only did dry corners, this room would have taken me all day. As it is, it's only taken me a couple of hours. What's more is, as you get more experience when it comes to plastering, you're going to want to be able to put on much larger areas. That will inevitably mean that you have to learn how to do wet corners. So which one is better? A corner trowel or by freehand? Well, in our opinion, although an experienced plasterer, when they freehand a corner, it looks incredible. And to be honest, it probably gives a slightly better finish because it's slightly sharper. When it comes to a corner trowel, it takes an awful lot of the work out of it, a lot of the stress out of it. The reality is, those trowels were made to make our life easier. It makes it easier, it is much, much faster. As such, generally, we tend to lean towards using a corner trowel, because the reality is, as the saying goes, why should I work hard when I can work easy? Yes, those trowels have been designed and made to make our life so much easier. You know, it's a little bit like I could mix up plaster by hand. Why would I want to though, when we have mixers made to do the job? And it's exactly the same with a corner trowel. When a corner trowel is used at the right time, namely towards the end of the set, it gives an excellent finish. So as such, in our opinion, certainly if you're just getting into plastering, save yourself the aggravation and just stick to using a corner trowel or a twitcher. We hope this video has been helpful in helping you understand how you can form wet corners, how you can get nice, sharp, crisp lines in your plastering. We thank you so much for watching. We hope you enjoy the video. Consider giving it a thumbs up and subscribing if you enjoy the content. And we look forward to seeing you on the next video. Thanks again.